Good evening and welcome to the Southampton Board of Selectmen's meeting. It's August 11th, 2016. Boy, I'm in good shape. Let's start the meeting here with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight's meeting is a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen pertaining to the Personnel Policy and Procedures Memorandum for expansion on the bylaws. Prior to starting that, I'd like to introduce the Board of Selectmen. We have Shannon Cutler to my left, Jackie Sears, James Labrie, John Martin, and myself, Charlie Konecki. Before we start into this meeting with the Personnel Board, I would like to have open time for the public for anything other than this. So if there's anyone that has anything to the public other than this is your opportunity. Seeing none, I'm now moving on to the open meeting between the Personnel Board and the Board of Selectmen relative to the new policies that are being proposed. It's my understanding that the Personnel Board has worked on this for some 2 years now, and it's reached a point now where the Board of Selectmen are thanking that volunteer group for putting this together, and we're going to see how far we can go with accepting most of this. What I'd like to do first is, because people do have concerns, is to open it up to anyone that has a concern to come to the podium. But what I'd like them to do is give me their name, their address, and the section they're having concerns with. Is there any in the public that would like to speak to this? Roger, please.
My name is Roger Ball. I live at 115 Glendale Road. As far as what?
I didn't get your address, Roger. You said it so well.
Okay. You have to. I have hearing aids. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. It's 115 Glendale Road. I don't hear everything, so you need to speak up a lot too.
So if I yell at you, you're
As far
not
as the
gonna...
section's concerned, they're all over the place, okay? At least was I had some concerns. I brought them up at the public meeting before. Section 1, item 3 on page 14. It says these rules and regulations are intended to be in accordance with state and federal law. Okay, the problem I have with this is, when I asked a question about town employees, it says everyone except the school. Okay, well, the school is under its own policy, which is dictated by the state. And I says, then why don't we just go with the state, with their policy, which is so great, and apply it to all of us? Save us a whole lot of time and aggravation. Okay, that can't be done, but that was my thoughts on that, my opinion. The other thing is the employees that this bylaw is going to apply to is about 9 people, because the exemptions are so great in this policy. There's no school, it's not elected officials, it's not people under contract, not appointed, not department heads, doesn't apply. So we've got 5 different groups here that we're trying to make a policy for. It's not going to work. We're only going to make a policy for about 9 people that don't fall into one of those categories. And I think it should be relooked at. As far as I'm concerned, a town employee is a town employee, whether it be me or you or anybody else. the rules should still apply. Okay? If you want to make a contract for wages and hours and everything else, that's fine. But this has to apply to everyone. Otherwise, you can't, don't say all. Okay? The other big issue I had was access to personnel records. Okay? I feel that there's way too many people who can have access to the personnel records. And I don't
What section is that?
That's section 3, item 4,
What page? 20?
page 20. It says personal records shall be considered confidential. Access to the records shall, unless circumstances dictate otherwise, that's a pretty open statement right there, be limited to the chairman of the Personal Policy Board, persons authorized by the Personal Policy Board, Board of Selectmen, Town Administrator, appointing authorities, department heads, and respective employees. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it says for their respective, it says department heads for their respective employees. So
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
it says department heads for their respective employees. So a department head can only look at their employees' files.
I understand that.
Right.
What I'm saying is, this is a whole lot of people. When you go back to definitions, okay, which is on page 16. An appointing authority shall mean any board, commission, or official authorized by the general law or otherwise hired to employ. Department heads shall include fire chief, police chief, highway superintendent, treasurer, town collector, town administrator, library director, council on the aging, town accountant, and water commissioner. There's a lot of people, folks. Okay? I don't see that they all have a need. I think these should be limited to chairman of the Personal Policy Board, department head, and the person involved. I believe I should be, if someone has to go into my record, I feel I should have a right to know what's going in it or what's coming out of it. I have to submit in writing 5 days prior to look at my own file. You people can pick it up anytime you want. I don't think the process is quite what it should be.
Roger, if I may, my understanding, and I'm speaking loud for you, is that this implies that the department head can look at the employees that are underneath that department head. That does not mean there's unilateral permission for the department head of, let's say, the police department.
I understand it. That's not what it says.
Well,
That's not the way it's written. I said it should be written in a different fashion. It's too open right now that anybody can, there's a gray area here that anybody can read into what they want. You can read it one way, I read it another.
Well, it says department head for their respective employees.
Yeah, that's the only person, along with the personal policy chairman, that should be in the file.
But it says that.
It does say that, but it also allows everyone else access under the same thing.
yeah, it allows the PQB, all members.
It doesn't say just the department, it's allowing everybody access the way it's written.
We may want to think about maybe just a chair, vice
I mean,
chair.
I know, I understand what they're trying to say, but they're not saying it in writing. And if this goes through like it's written, we've got a big gray area here.
Can I ask PQB a question? On your memo to us dated June 23rd, you said you have no issues with making the medical files confidential, more confidential than the regular personnel files, correct? But
If I may, John, what I was going to do, John, is let them speak and then have PQB come up and
okay,
pretty much close this as to where they are with things.
okay, just want to ask a question.
I understand. I'm just talking.
There's another item, but I'll tell you what, because I'm nervous, I forgot it. I don't usually get up and talk, usually I get up and scream.
Yeah, Roger, you can yell at me. You've done it before. It's not unusual.
Can I change my seat?
Randall will tell you I like to scream. But it had to do with, well, I can't tell you now.
Fridays?
Huh?
Is there anything to do with Fridays?
Well, there was a
I
question
see that
about...
in your previous one, that's why I,
Yeah, that was when, that's been straightened out because I guess I didn't understand the way it was working. And it used to be, when we had a holiday on a Friday, it would move a day forward. Okay? So, and then we would take, like, our Friday would be Thursday, we get a full day's pay on Friday. And it works the same, but it's just handled in a different manner with the new management. Vacation leave. I'm not quite sure.
What section are you on, Roger?
Pardon?
What section are you on?
I am in section 12,
Page,
1, section 2.
40. Thank you.
Okay. It says vacation leave is granted on July 1st. Okay. An employee in continuous service shall be granted one service equivalent after completion of his first year. So after the completion of the first year, a person gets a week's vacation. I understand that right? Or not? Yes, no,
that's
maybe?
correct. right?
Yeah. You're
Okay.
correct.
Okay. If the person started in November, his full year of service is on the starting date in November.
Mm-hmm.
If it's after July 1st, he loses the week because it wasn't awarded to him on the 1st of July.
Charlie, I know
We're in the
I
pay.
don't mean to interrupt, but first, the 90-day probationary period has to take place. No vacation is given during the 90-day probationary period. If there's any months left after that in that fiscal year, there's a calculation down the bottom, as you can see, .83 is multiplied times, which is nothing more than 1/12, one
Yeah.
month out of the 12, and that's how you calculate the rest of that fiscal year as far as vacation. After that, of course, it would pick up again the next fiscal year, and we go from there.
So the formula's already in there to correct for that.
Yeah, but that person's actually losing from July to whatever the start date is.
Well, no, because they didn't
He's
start.
only picking up this here compensation after his first year.
No.
So he'll be prorated from that point back to July. No?
Prorated starting after his 90-day period. His probationary period is over, then he's prorated on the months forward.
Okay, till July 1st.
Yes.
Then he'd get a week vacation,
Then he gets eligible for the full week, right?
okay? But it's really his second year of work, which means he's really entitled to 2 weeks.
It's a year plus.
It's a year plus, it's not, first of all, you got 90 days of probationary period. Let's say he starts in November, he really doesn't start working until, we'll say, February. There's a 90-day period. Then, once he hits into July, it's prorated back those months, so he gets some time, and then into July of the following year, he gets that week.
I understand.
So it does figure out, Roger.
Okay, well,
What-
No,
One question, a 90-day probationary period. Once you get past that, do you go back to the start date for your year, or do you start at the 91st day?
No, whatever time is left in the next fiscal year, you use it for probation,
91st day.
91st day.
So everybody loses 90 days in the,
Yeah, no vacation in the 90 days. That's my reading of it.
okay, that's what I read too.
Yeah.
It's not the same as sick time, but
Right.
yeah, vacation time is 90 days.
But I
They
also,
don't start accruing until 91 days, that's going to be their day. I don't like that idea.
okay, I also read that it's up to the department head. The department head may want to extend the probationary period. If he extends it, does that defer the start of the benefit?
Theoretically, it does, but
Okay,
it's not defined specifically. Maybe we should do that.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Okay,
okay.
I'll
Sure.
save it.
I mean, 90 days is pretty standard in the industry. I think in
Yeah.
governmental type jobs, we can certainly limit that or change that. But
Well, Art, what I was trying to do is let the questions come forward, and then after we have the questions, close that session, and then have our discussion.
that's fine, sorry.
Go ahead, Roger.
Section 13, page 42. Sick leave. This is a whole new program that's being implemented, from what I understand. And it's going to eliminate the 26-week short-term disability that we have now. Okay, which I would just like to say that I'm deadly against. That's a great benefit. Okay, especially as we all get older and unexpected things come up, it helps. When we were in the other meeting, it was said it's costing us a fortune. Well, it's not us that's making it cost you a fortune, it's the administration that's costing a fortune, because it's administered by department heads, okay, and by the Board of Selectmen. So I think rather than just change the whole plan and throw it out, maybe we should take a second look at how it's being run, okay, from the board standpoint, from the department head standpoint. I know not many, I know of instances where the department has made a decision and he's been overridden by the board. Okay? Got to get on the same page. And I think that should be looked at prior to changing it to this whole new system, which is very complicated as far as I'm concerned. It's hard for me to understand, figure it out. Money for money, it's not going to match. Okay? We also, I said, what happens when your 520 hours runs out? And they said, you buy insurance. They've talked to the insurance people and everything else. Well, it would have been nice if someone would have let us know. We could have talked to the insurance people instead of waiting until the whole thing is changed and then saying you have to buy it over here if you want it. It's something that should have been incorporated into the whole process of rewriting this thing. I don't know of any employee that was asked what they thought about this until they put it out here for a public meeting. I mean, it's kind of a quick thing. You would think that you'd have to have some input from the employees themselves to try to make it better. And I don't think there was any of that. At least it wasn't me. Okay. And that's all I have for now. That's my opinion of what I think should
Roger,
have happened. It didn't.
we value your opinion. I'm trying to keep this as open as I can so we can get public input on this. I thank you for getting up at that podium. I appreciate it. Anyone else like to speak?
Hey, Charlie, do you have another copy of this?
Do I have a copy of that? I don't have a, I'm using the larger document for my notes for the meeting. All right, I will do this. George, just because it's you,
Oh, Jesus, thanks.
all right? Here you go, with all the little notes and everything else. Nah, you can do whatever you want. You got a wood stove?
There will be a,
I got plenty of wood too.
There you go, I heard about that.
isn't there a deposit?
Oh, trust me, George owes me. He's running a tab. I'm sorry, mister.
Good evening, Randall Kemp, 64 Fulmer Road. I had a couple of questions. I think they've been documented there, but might as well say them again. So the policy, I was at the public hearing. It is supposed to tighten up things that were not cost effective, and not spend so much. So I guess my first question is, this doesn't apply to elected officials. Is there a separate policy of how elected officials are given benefits?
I honestly don't know.
Because they enjoy the same ones that are granted under this policy, but they're not addressed in this policy.
Given the fact that I'm an elected official with no benefits to the town and volunteer my time, I've never dug into that.
Okay.
So we should.
How many,
Treasurer and the clerk.
those are the only two we're talking about, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Second, that was, I'm sorry, I didn't state what section that one was in, but that's right at the beginning, under purpose, where they are excluded. One, two. All right, the second place I'm looking at. Section 11, holidays. My copy's actually mislabeled. It says 10-2, but I assume it's 11-2. Recognize holidays. The following holidays shall be recognized by the town on the day on which they are legally observed by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and on these days employees shall be excused from all duties without loss of pay, except in the cases where department heads or appointing authorities determine that the employee is required to work in order to maintain essential town services. What happens then? It's not addressed anywhere.
38.
So 11-2, holidays, except where I imagine the select board would be basically designating the department head to stay on if there's a holiday and there's an issue.
But you're asking about getting paid if you work a holiday, like a day in lieu of, right?
That's what I'm
Right.
suggesting.
Yeah, there should be something in here. Is there? Well, if you have to work New Year's Day, for instance, because there's a storm, do you get compensated for working a holiday, and where is that in here?
The sick leave catch-up,
Okay.
Right.
well, yeah, that addresses it for hourly employees.
What are you saying? Department head?
May I
I'm-
suggest we go back to the same formula? Let them do the presentation, you guys take the notes, then you guys get up at the podium, you respond to those questions, then
Next
this
sec-
board will go back and forth relative to it.
Next section is
I'd like to understand what he's talking about. Department head or who are you talking about? Because I think it takes care of.
hourly employees are covered, salary employees are not addressed.
The only, most of the salary employees are.
Okay, so we got that now.
Section 13, 3, sick leave. I'm sorry.
You obviously have a lot.
I actually find the 13.3 is very confusing with the catch-up. I would really like a thorough explanation of how that was established. And something else that jumped out at me was the maximum of 520. This went back and forth during the hearing. But So take, for instance, the difference between an employee who works 20 hours per week and an employee that works 40 hours per week. A 20-hour employee, if they were allowed to get up to the maximum amount of time covered, which is obviously going to take them longer because they're granted less per year, they would have 26 weeks of coverage, whereas a 40-hour employee would only have 13 weeks of coverage.
26 weeks at 20 hours,
But 26 weeks of their weekly pay.
20 hours.
26 weeks of their weekly pay.
Art, I'm going to have to put you up at the podium because the people that are watching us on air are not hearing a word you're saying. So you got an option here.
Section 13.7, certification of illness. This is another one that the PPP board did not agree with. I don't agree with this policy.
What section again?
13.7, certification of illness.
Got it. Thank you.
Past practice has been up to a department head to determine if the certification of illness is needed. If I've got employees who have a cold, a rundown, the flu, the norovirus, I don't want to send them to the doctor. I want them to get better. On the other hand, I don't want them coming in to work sick if they could have just taken another day, stayed home, and would feel better.
So is your question on the required after 3 days?
It's more of a comment. I think it's micromanagement, and I would prefer to see it left up to the department head. If you need a question, why is it so important to have a certification of illness? And or you go and you're paying, you go into the emergency room. Yeah, or you can't get into your doctor, so you pay $75 for an emergency room visit. I just don't agree. Section 23.
What page?
Page 59. Drug-free workplace. As far as I can see, this only applies to the highway department, DOT drivers. There's no other place in town where people are subjected to drug tests.
So you want this stricken from there?
Well, I mean, if you're going to tout that you're a drug-free workplace, why does it only apply to one department in town?
The question's still the same. Do you wish this struck from?
No, not necessarily. It's just a question.
I asked you a question.
The answer is no.
Okay.
And the smoke-free workplace, just something I noticed it says, which is on the next page, section 24, coverage, all employees, customers, and visitors. Are customers and visitors going to be given a copy of this policy? And
No.
who enforces that?
Smoke-free workplaces are covered under your Board of Health, and they're also part of the state general law if you really want to get into it.
I don't. Let me go through the last couple pages here. Lastly, I just want to say to the PPV board, though I don't agree with this entire policy, I do appreciate the work that the volunteers of that board did working on this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to approach the podium? Our town clerk, the elected official.
No, thank you. Okay, Janine Domina, 130 Strong Road. I was also at the public meeting, one of the public meetings, and I was just wondering if there were any changes made after hearing the public. but the comments from the public, and,
2 typos,
okay,
2 typos.
and it's the calculation numbers, they had, .86 instead of .83 for both sick time and vacation time. And then Mike O'Connell found that we had put down, I'm trying to remember whatever word we put down at the non-FMLA was wrong, so that's all the changes. We haven't changed anything.
But that's the purpose of this meeting.
Right. They actually sent us a summary of the meetings with the concerns of the people that were there.
If you'd
Okay,
like
so
to
it's
see
going-
it, George has got my copy.
so it's going to be up to the select board to make those changes if you so
Correct.
choose. Okay, because I had brought up the concern about Friday, if a holiday should fall on a Friday. And in the past, I've been here over 10 years, and that has been customary that we always observed it, like on a Thursday. And so I was just wondering what you would think about that. And I also want to thank the PPP board. They've worked hard on this. And I guess my concern would be maybe we could open it up to the employees who this is going to affect and not make a final determination tonight. But after you review it and make your suggestions or the final copy, give it to the employees one more time for their feedback, because it does affect them. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, you get the bat a second time.
All right.
No,
You only get one free one.
you only get one free one. This is going to cost.
All right, so I forgot one of the major ones, the short-term disability.
What section?
The paid sick leave,
Oh,
but
13.
it's basically the elimination of the 26-week. You know, I've got guys in my department who do very physical jobs, and that's a pretty important benefit for them. And I want to stress that it is a long-standing benefit that has been afforded to them. And I think as a town, we've talked recently about losing good employees. If you want to retain employees, you don't take away benefits, you accentuate the ones you already have. And that's just how I feel about it.
Point taken.
All right,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
If there is no more public comment, I'm closing this section for public comment and would like to engage the Personnel Board with the Board of Selectmen. Talk slow. Art, I actually enumerated the sections. Would you like me to read to you what I have captured in case the board?
I think I have them down, but if you want, go ahead.
I'm gonna just give the bullets points here, and board members, please, if I'm wrong, say something. Section 3-4, access.
You got pages by chance?
I did not write the pages down.
So what section again?
3-4, the access of the records,
So page 20.
page 20.
Yep.
Section 11-2, holiday for departments, mostly focusing on the department heads during,
You want to do them one at a time?
I'm just giving him a list, so he knows. Holidays, department, 11-2. The next one was 13-3, sick leave, the 26-week issue. The next one is 13-7, certification of illness. And the last one is 23-2, drug-free. I believe those are the points.
Got a few more, but
Yeah, there's some more.
Okay, but those are the ones I captured.
We had 24 smoke-free workplace he brought up.
Okay, 24, smoke-free workplace.
13-1, the maximum 520.
13-1. What is that, Heather?
It's the maximum of the 526 days. Hours. I like the days better. They wouldn't disagree.
Wow.
That would be just better.
It did, didn't it?
We got 11.3 also, which is terms of holiday pay.
What number is that, John?
11.3,
Tur-
that was about managers.
Yep.
We've got 12.1, which is vacation leave coverage, that was brought up.
1-2 is the, doesn't apply to town officials.
1-2?
And since we're making a list, I'll add 4-3. There's just a typo in there. I just don't want to forget about it.
Typo. Got it.
Section is 4-3.
4-3. Well, it talks about the quarry check.
And 13.4 for accumulation. If
13.
What's 13-4?
it's sick leave accumulation. That's the part-time versus full-time that Randall brought up. And 13.7 for a certification of illness.
We have
We do? Okay.
that. Charlie Deacon.
We got it all?
Who knows?
Shannon? Because I can't see you unless I... All right.
12.0 vacation leave.
Chairman Lawrence?
Yes, Art Lawrence, 113 Crooked Ledge Road. Okay, let me go down my list and you'll jump in because I know access to records. I listened to Mr. Ball and
Page 20.
medical records we do not touch. Those are totally separate. We never see medical records, so that is not our purview or anybody on on that list. As far as people have access, I certainly need access almost every day because I'm putting PCFs, and I think Mr. Ball agreed that that was an issue. I just have to do it as part of my job as chairman. I think it's totally up to the select board if they want to narrow down the people. You're absolutely right as far as department heads. It's only people under them. And then, of course, as Mr. Ball mentioned, if he wants to see or if he's not sure what's going in his records, he can formally apply to get those records. So I'm not trying to pass the buck here, but if you folks think it should be a narrow group, we certainly can make that change.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
The appointing authority,
that's boards. There's only two, Board of Health and Board of Assessors, who have their department heads.
so we should probably define that better.
I think we define them as the department heads. We say either department head or appointing authority. Right. Those are the only two that I know of. Though actually there's three because I guess the COA does have people, so there's three. Water Commission.
4.
Selectboard.
Yeah, but we don't call those out in any way. We just
Right.
state. Now, John, we can certainly put in who they are if you want to define that better. But okay, any further? Yes, ma'am.
Do we?
Just one point, that every employee should see everything that's going in their record within 10 days of the time it goes in their record. So if there's any disciplinary actions, if there's pay changes,
Right.
my understanding is that they see that information and get a copy of it. So it's not that they don't know what's in their record. or they should know what's in
So
their record.
proactively, if somebody puts something in, they
Right.
have to be
Right.
presented with a copy.
That's, I believe that's actually a state law.
Yes.
More so than anything else. And that's what we generally do. A lot of people will see at the bottom,
Yep.
CC personnel records, or they'll be handed it and it says, or they'll be told, it's going in your personal records, but you're supposed to notify the individual in writing that a specific item is going in their file.
So if you give them a memo, disciplinary memo, and it says CC personnel file, that meets the rule, the law? If you give somebody a disciplinary action, a memo, saying, here's what we talked about, here's our actions, and it says CC personnel file, that meets the law?
Yeah, that makes
Okay.
the notification, assuming the person is given that
Right.
document. Right.
Okay, thanks.
May I ask the board a question? Because we have a number of bullet items here. Would the board entertain that when we start this and we start to review, we decide if we're going to pull this aside as a separate issue to vote on later or modify? What I'm getting at is the entire document, I think, needs to move forward, but there's sections of the document that we need to put on the side that we're uncomfortable with. So rather than not voting on the entire thing, I would like to take certain sections that we're having issues with and make sure we got those sections, put them on the side, vote the entire document except for those sections. Does that make sense?
I'm going to say no, only because certain sections you pull out, not knowing which ones they are. If you vote on the document without those, may not make sense. They may cross-reference each other.
And second, if you vote on the document, if that goes into effect, what happens to the parts that aren't voted on? Do they go to the old, how do they,
I think it would stay to the old.
that might get confusing.
Yeah.
I would rather not. I'd rather vote on it as a whole.
Yeah. Or as we go along, take a vote on each section and see what we want to do with it. We're here, it's taken them 2 years, we're here, we might as well spend the time to do it.
That was the purpose of today.
Yeah,
Yeah, was to keep it. I'm fine, I just don't want us to go too far into this and then turn around and go, wait a minute.
we've got only about 15 sections. And, I mean, the right folks are here, that's my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, I think John made a good point, that if it cross-references, if we vote on one section and then another section
Yeah,
mixes with it, it might be a problem.
yeah, and plus what you said, it leaves gaps, where do they go? Yeah, okay. So,
Okay.
you want my,
The next was vacation. Mr. Ball brought up, and I hope everybody understands the probationary period. Again, that can be, oh, I'm sorry.
excuse me.
Hang on a second,
Uh,
I'm
I've-
sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
On this particular section, 3.4, we're on page 20 still, 3.4, access to records. I mean, my personal opinion is we should limit it to the chair, vice chair of the personnel, the board of selectmen, the appointing authorities, and the such. I don't think, I happen to be the vice chair, but even if I wasn't, I don't think we all need to look at the personnel records. If the chair has an issue and the chair is not available and the vice chair is there, I think that's fine. Same with the PQB.
Administrator is a question, I guess.
Well, town administrator, I'm okay with that because these people, we're going to be reporting directly or indirectly. But I don't think all the boards need to look at it. That just opens it up to people.
I would think the boards would only have access to their particular
People.
people.
Well, that doesn't say that, though. Board of Selectmen, we don't have people. So does that mean we can look at everybody?
You do. You
Well,
have
you know,
an accountant, you have a number of people.
We do. yeah,
But if
I
you're a
suppose.
liaison to a department
Yeah.
and you're not a vice chair or chair, then you
You
don't.
can't look at anything.
Well, I'm a liaison to the Finance Committee, and that's really not a good example because there's no people under them, so.
Yeah.
I like the chair, vice chair, but that's my opinion, and
Well,
as we know, there's 4 more.
let me turn this around. You have the paragraph in front of you.
Yep.
What do you want stricken out of that paragraph?
Or added to.
Or added
I would
to?
say add 2. It applies to the chair, vice chair of these committees. We'd have to work it into each, but,
So you wanted to say personnel is authorized by the policy, Board of Selectmen, chair, vice chair, appointing authorities, chairs and vice chairs?
yeah, and the PQB,
Right.
that's my opinion.
And the town administrator.
Yeah, we'll leave the rest of them in there. The department head and town administrator.
Just add people to this list.
No, we're actually cutting it down.
Can you go through that one more time, because I don't think I am following.
You want me to do it?
So if you can read that sentence, John, and modify it as
Okay,
you feel.
I'm gonna, okay, persons authorized by the, not persons authorized, hold on. Be limited to the chairman of the Personnel Policies and Procedures Board, take away persons authorized by the Personnel Policies and Procedures Board, the chair, vice chair of the Board of Selectmen, the town administrator, chair, vice chair of the appointing authorities, and department heads for their respective employees. And I'd say take out the persons authorized by the Personnel Policies and Procedures Board, but is that a mistake? Were you thinking of somebody that
No.
I'm missing? No?
No, that's fine. I don't think we have a problem with that, right?
And do you want to change the chair of the PQB to the chair and vice chair? To make it consistent in case you're not around, or?
You can,
Designate.
or it
We
does,
don't really have a vice, we don't
Yeah.
really have a vice chair.
I have a
That's
quick
easy.
question. So, at any time, can anyone on the PPP board go into the files? If like Art's on vacation, can someone else go in there?
no, I'm the only one that has the keys.
Okay.
They can break into anything, but.
I've got the keys right here. This is the keys to the kingdom. I'm the only one that has a set of them. Actually, you guys couldn't get in there either without
I don't
my
have the
keys.
key to it.
Right.
But then I don't have a key to anything in
Yeah,
town.
we don't have a key to town hall either.
Neither do I. And I'm here more than anybody.
I'm lucky they let me in the house.
I don't know. I would consider adding chair, vice chair, the select board, and liaison of that department.
If there is one.
If they're involved with that, I think
Okay.
that's important.
May I add a comment? I would actually, I would backtrack. I would actually take off the Board of Selectmen unless it's one of your people that you oversee as the appointing authority to, because ultimately, again, remember, we deal with positions, not persons. So you might have phenomenal people, best character, good faith, good morale, everything, but you don't know who's coming next. You don't know what the next turn's going to bring you. So you always want to make the adaptation to the position, not the person. And it seems like it potentially, if you have someone who's over controlling or whatever, you know, it could go a bad direction. The town administrator, the reason it's important for me to have access, and I don't directly access, as Art said, he has the key. I can't get anything without Art. But essentially, we've had to go through files if there's a legal case pending or something of the sorts that we need records on information.
So what if we needed to look at a personnel file for a legal action? How would we get at it?
You're probably going to go through it through my office. You would ask me, as the town administrator, to retrieve the information for you. But I would also say, you know, depending on what you're asking, I might say no. Because if you're saying something, you know, there's certain things. If you have a family member who's suing you,
No, I got
I'm
you.
going to say, no, John, no.
But if we need access for legal, it should say this. And I don't disagree with, we don't need access normally.
Can you define access? Access is actually going into the file and taking it, or being able to view it? It's viewing it.
Right.
So access is the viewing of the
Right.
file.
No files should leave this building.
Right.
Correct. And they
I
don't.
agree, yeah, I agree with that,
Yeah,
but I'm
they
talking about
don't.
viewing it, okay.
So there's a motion on the floor by John to modify the language.
So I got one more question. If there is, let's say it is a file that is pulled for a legal matter or whatever, the board can't review it. There's 3 members of the board would not be able to look at that document while we're having executive session or whatever.
It says unless circumstances dictate otherwise. And that, I would think a legal action would be otherwise.
That's the escape clause.
Right.
That's really what that is. I have,
Yeah.
personally, I've been here a few years, and I've never had a reason to go into someone's personnel file.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
I think it just should be written tighter because it's very loose. If you just put the PPP board, the department head, and town administrator. Because there's really, I don't think there's too much of a need of anybody else looking at it.
Other than an appointing authority.
Which would be under a department head really, because they're still a
Well-
head. But Right, however you want to word that, but that's it. It shouldn't be so loosely written.
But you said the,
People like Roger Ball.
sorry, you said the PQB board, the whole board?
No, just Art, and then if he
Just the
has an
chair.
appointing authority that he wants,
Chair or appointee? Yeah,
you know,
I'm
within
okay
his
with that.
board, of course.
I can live with that, and I'd rather give as much confidentiality to the employee as possible.
So we are at Chair of the Personnel Board, Chair of the Board of Selectmen,
No, we
struck that?
struck the whole thing, yeah,
We have
I'm asking.
Heather.
yep,
All right,
So just go to Heather.
Town Administrator,
yeah.
appointing authorities and department head for their respected employees,
Right,
period.
Okay,
can live with that.
it makes sense. It's,
Appointment authority, I got a problem, but not the head. If you go back to definitions, and use definitions for an appointment authority, it says,
Maybe just list the boards.
any board or commission or official authorized by the general law. All right?
But for their respective,
Any board or commission,
yeah.
conservation commission,
Right, only,
board of assessors.
no,
But it's-
only
it's
for
all-
their respective employees, nobody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, Board of
All they can
Assessors,
see is that one employee, hey, I need to see Mr. Ball, stuff, and you weren't Randall, it was a board, it was the water commission. I would show that only yours, the appointing authority being the, but they don't see anything else. They can't.
I'm fine.
So the Board of Assessors can't come in and look at yours, they can only look at their employees. That's all that they're saying. So if it's an appointing authority, it's only their employees in that department.
Oh, it does look good.
Okay, we're,
One and a new board comes in, and this board's gone and a new board comes in, everything can change. I wanna try to eliminate all the gray area.
Right.
So-
I'm not quite sure, but we need to do that so that the next board and the board after that, there's no question.
there's a motion on the table from Mr. Martin.
well, actually, Shannon, I'm going to rescind my motion, and Shannon.
I don't think you actually formally made a motion, John,
didn't?
so I think we're
I'm
okay.
putting John on the
Why
spot.
don't you make your motion?
I've been having fun with
But
it.
can I just add on that one piece, which might, I don't know, Roger, if this would satisfy you, but what if instead of saying appointing authorities and department heads for their respective employees, you say department heads in parentheses, this could be an appointing authority? I know it's already defined earlier, but provide more clarification. So Roger, what about for department heads, parentheses, which could be an appointing authority, close parentheses, for their respective employees? Is that clearer?
No, I'm trying not to
There you
do
go.
that.
Charlie, were you listening?
I was listening to you, and part of the problem here is, this was supposed to be a closed meeting between the Personnel Board and the Board of Selectmen after comments were made. I value Mr. Ball's input, I truly do. But the discussion needs to focus on this board and that board as to where we're going. Heather, you seem to have a golden nugget with your approach. So would you like to articulate that so we can all hear it?
So this is where I think we're at. Personnel records shall be considered confidential, and access to records shall, unless circumstances dictate otherwise, be limited to the chairman of the PPB, the town administrator, and the chair, and department heads, including the chair of appointing authorities for their respective employees.
Does anyone want to make that into a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All there's no opposed. So that's moving forward.
The next one I had on my list that may not be on yours, but was vacation. I think we hopefully cleared up the probationary part of that,
Section,
section on the vacation.
13?
13,
I think it's 13.
no, vacation.
Oh, no, that's sick leave. Okay.
No, I'm just going by
40.
what I got.
Page 40, yeah, that's what I thought.
So, what I'm asking is 90 days make sense? Is 0 days make sense? We can change whatever pleases you. I think the rest of it is agreeable, I guess, to most. I didn't have anything else on my list about vacation.
I personally don't see a reason to give someone vacation time during a probationary period.
It's not giving them, it's accruing it.
Right.
You know, that it's applicable.
Right,
I agree.
but
Well, let me throw something out, and at least the way I'm looking at it, the probationary period's 90 days, but once the person passes the probationary period and they're going to be a full-time employee, they should get credit for the 90 days they're here, so they've already got
I
3
agree.
months into it.
We can write,
Retroactive to.
Well, it's just, you got to get to 90 days before you,
Can't use any vacation.
you can't even accrue it, but they'll use that time frame for accrual once you satisfactorily pass the probationary period. If it gets extended, then that gets extended too.
now,
That's the normal way that I know.
one thing to note there is that, and this really is not germane to this discussion, I don't think, because it's under a CBA, but remember, police, it's a year, it's not 90 days. That's what their probationary period is. But yeah, we have no problem putting that in there. So after 90, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I'll shut up.
so I need a motion.
Let's read it first. They're eligible for vacation leave only after their 90-day probationary period has been completed. Okay, so that's true. It's just the definition of that. Are you starting at day 1 or day 91? And I don't think it says that in here. Was I missing it?
So we,
Below maybe?
so,
Yeah, down below it probably says it. But that 12-1, it looks okay.
so vacation will then accrue retroactive to the 90 days?
It accrues of the day, back to
that
the
they
day of
start.
employment.
Day one, yeah.
Yeah,
Day one, yep. You just can't use it until after.
right.
And again, the formula would play because we're saying it's probably going to be, it's certainly going to be less than a year, 1 fiscal year, so we would apply that .83.
Yeah, I can't see penalizing people for the first 3 months of employment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's fine.
So I still need a motion.
Again, I don't think, I'm just reading through it, I don't think it contradicts it. I think our definition was different, but let me just check. Am I wrong? Is there something in here that says you start on the 91st day?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think it says anything, I think it's silent.
Right.
So
I
I
think it
think,
needs to be clear.
that's right. So we need a sentence in there that says that,
Yeah, it'll,
That once their probationary period
to
is
add a
over.
sentence.
We put a sentence in that clarifies that once the probationary period is completed, the employee starts accruing from the employment date.
okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
The next one on my list is the big one, is the disability, sick leave, you know,
Where's that?
That's 13, page 42.
the disability is out of it, so it's not anymore 26 weeks. We took that out for discussions with you folks before. And one issue, well, I won't bring that up. So that's the, I guess the crux. Are we leaving it 26 weeks in, or are we going with this sick time policy? I like the beat.
What was the question?
Question is, are we going to reinstitute or continue on with the disability, 26 weeks, et cetera, or are we going to go with this new sick time policy,
Or is it somewhere in between?
or something in between?
I don't think it should be changed, but that's me.
I like the idea of having a standard policy. That's how it's done everywhere.
I read one of your responses to your open meeting, and it was mentioned in there that you looked into disability insurance and it wasn't feasible.
Cost was the big-
Cost-wise, did you actually go out and get some quotes on that?
We did. We
And-
spent a lot of time on it, believe me, and you know, this was about a year ago now, maybe more, and it was running somewhere in the neighborhood of 15,000, 16,000. Now, it could be more, could be less, but that was the quotes then. And it was given by a former select person who gave us the quotes, and he said they were the best he could do.
You say 15, 16,000
Yeah,
per what?
for the year,
For 9 people.
for all the employees, yeah.
No, not 9 people, for all employees that are non-school.
Okay.
So let's back up for a second. When they say 9 people earlier, I think that's a misconception. This policy applies to everyone who is not a school employee, because school employees have their own handbook. This applies wherever a CBA or a contract for personnel is absent. So if it doesn't specify and it doesn't contradict, this goes into effect. With this 26 weeks piece, does not touch collective bargaining agreements because they have specifically written into them the 26 week. When we originally went out to quote for the disability, we didn't say we want this for the non-CBA people, just the department heads and so forth. We said, can you reveal to us a policy and give us information if we were to say all employees who are non-school were to be put on this plan, what would the cost be?
That's a lot more employees.
Yeah,
Yes,
and it's
but-
cheaper too.
But you have to keep in mind a couple things when we did this. The one thing, and here's one of the downsides of that 26-week program. We are not insurance people. We do not follow up on claims. So if someone says, I'm coming out for 26 weeks because something happened, I felt, oh, I can't walk, or whatever it may be, and they're unable to follow their job, we generally take their word for it with the doctor's note and say, thank you very much, and, we'll pay you as long as you're out. Insurance, such as something like this, you're paying them, and what happens is they make it their job to make sure that if you are out on disability, that you are actually out for legitimate reasons. You can't have a back problem, be roofing the house. But they take care of the whole claim, as opposed to we are not claim providers. That's one of the reasons we went with the direction of looking at a sick bank, because it's more of a, honest to go piece. There's a couple differences too for folks at home who may not understand this. The sick bank is 100% pay. The 26-week program is 75% pay. So this only may be half the time, but it's 100% pay for up to the entire piece of time. The other benefit is the only thing we need from this program to actually make it work is you have to provide a doctor's note saying you're going out, and you need to provide a doctor's note to come back, which makes it a lot less liable on our side to saying we had someone out on this disability policy, but we don't know if it's actually legit. We generally don't have additional funds to go out and send them to another doctor and so forth.
So, we spent a lot of time on this, and that's the quotes we got. Now, we do, the town does provide, at cost, this type of disability, both short-term and long-term. I can't believe people wouldn't have it. I've always had it when I was working, but that's what it came up. It came up 14,000, 15,000, and maybe it's a little less now because we had some pretty high-level people at the time, such as the highway department and the former police chief, but still, it was a fair amount of money.
At my business, we have short-term and long-term. Short-term lasts 3 months. Long-term is indefinite.
Right.
I ran some numbers, and we're renewing our policy right now. I know it's a different demographics, but for us, I just threw a number out of $50,000. If somebody is making $50,000, the short-term piece of this is $16 and change per month. And that would cover 60% of their pay. If you use after-tax dollars, then they receive the benefit tax-free. So that's like 90-something
You
percent.
better be careful how you handle that, because all of a sudden your employee can get whacked with a pretty damn good tax bill if you don't do it right.
Yes, you have to have,
So
if you go with,
Right.
they direct you through
So
this.
you give a W-2 and you pay for that W-2, or whatever the hell they call it these days, but you need to be careful. We went through all this, and there are all sorts of schemes of how to do it. But,
Yeah.
all of a sudden somebody wakes up one day and they get whacked with a very large tax bill. It's
Yeah.
because that was.
It has to be set up properly. If it's set up properly, it works very well.
Correct.
And then the long-term disability was, it came to $17 a month and change for the same average 50,000.
Right.
So, and that's a known, and that's better than the 26 weeks that the town has now, I think. And I think it's very reasonable. If you start looking at what it costs to start banking and managing that, and I
So
don't think it's a ton more
You're
money.
talking both short, and so that's what, 26, they're almost $30 per month per employee, right?
Well,
Correct.
But if they can accrue 520 hours,
Yeah.
that takes care of the short-term period. That's 3 months, 520 hours.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we pay the sick time for 3 months, and they accrue it. They should, and I do this myself, I pay for long-term disability,
Right.
which is $12, $13 a month for me, and in case I max out on my sick time, and then that kicks in after I'm maxed out. So that's what I was assuming this would be. We pay for the sick time up to 520, they pay for their own long-term disability, in your case, $17 a month, which is about $200 a year it would cost them for long-term disability
Right.
coverage.
I mean, you know,
I'm just throwing
You're right.
that
No,
out
you're
there,
right.
that maybe,
I mean, we had some very high people too, and that
Yes.
offset, and that skewed it up, you know, like I say, when people were making over 100K, it pushed it up quite a bit.
maybe
but-
this is one of the pieces that you might want to, we just verify it, and if it comes in astronomical, then we just,
Yeah, I think now, because again, we don't have those high salaries, it might be less, yeah.
Does the board wish to make a motion to pass over the sick leave section?
I'm not sure how many are on the policy, but we have a total like 7.
Sorry, I mean,
Can I ask, Jim, so your company pays for that? Is that what you're saying, or the employee pays for that? Just for,
We pay for it, but they have to claim it because it's a benefit, and then they pay the tax on it. And if you pay the tax on it, you can actually use it as a deduction, but then when they get their benefit, you have to pay the taxes.
and who administrates it?
The insurance company administrates it, which is nice. If there's an investigation,
Do it all.
we had people that actually went from short-term to long-term, and they'll carry them all the way through to Social Security if it ends up there.
Actually, I've had an employee that did that, almost 40 years.
I think what Heather was saying, and I know somebody that has it, they check on these people and they what's the word I'm looking for? Certify them? Recertify them. It's not just, okay, we'll see you in 26
Yeah,
weeks.
so they may need to come back sooner than they might have wanted to if it was the town's policy and insurance wasn't involved in it, so. there's-
So what do you want to return?
Does the board wish to pass over this section on sick leave? Does the board wish to modify this?
I think we should pass over. It's such a hairy section. I think we need more.
Yeah, I think it needs a little more work. I think it would be nice just to verify that
Get some new quotes on it.
long, short-term disability.
When I say pass over, what I mean is we're just gonna put that section on the side of the whole policy, and then at our next meeting, we get together with the personnel board and just visit that topic.
I mean, it's the ideal case, and I certainly, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, it's the perfect case if you have the money to do it. You know, we're always told here, we never have the money to do anything, so, so that's what we came up with, and actually, the 520 hours, I think Mr. Ball or somebody asked where that came from. That was a meeting we had, because I had actually higher than that, but we brought it down, so.
Yeah, the other thing is if we're giving people a week to put in the bank, there's value to that. So that would offset the premium as well. Just something to consider.
And I did check around, there's nobody in the area, and I only could find one in the state, not that I looked at every town and city in the state, but the only one I only could find one that has the same type of, a similar type situation like we currently have. And there's nobody in the area that has anything like 26 weeks, you know, that the town administers, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay in general with it, but if we need to get some better quotes or something, that's fine.
I'm hearing that you're not satisfied with it, but it's non-specific as to what you want to see in place. So the approach is passing over it and revisiting it, in my mind.
Yes.
I mean, I have another concern with this, and it's maybe a trifle compared to everything else, but this 3-day requirement for someone to get a doctor's note,
We're on a different section now.
Yeah.
it's all part of
This is just 3-1 right now. We
the.
haven't gotten to the others.
I'm talking sick leave. I'm saying, are you passing over the sick leave section?
I think we should.
Or are you want to narrow it down, then narrow it down?
Well, 13.1, I'm comfortable with it, to be honest with you, but I've got some questions on some of the other segments. So if you want to just get off 13.1 for a couple minutes and go down and review the rest of that section, see what other comments we have, that may help us make a decision.
That's fine.
So John, you said you're comfortable with 13.1?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm used to. It's just, you know, a normal process out there.
Yeah.
See, where employees may not like it because they're changing from one to the other, but that's normal. But I think it gives them some good benefits and good coverage.
Now, somebody had a comment on the 3-day, is that Charlie?
The table's more.
Mr. Chairman? You had a comment on the 3-day?
13.7?
Well, yeah, the final one there, the 3-day, I personally, just from having people sick, myself sick and everything else, I think if it said 5 days, it'd be more realistic. Because
fine.
there's so many of these illnesses that they're still sick on the 3rd day.
Agreed.
And sending somebody to the doctor to spend $100 to get a note to save $100 causes them to go to work, and then they
Yeah.
basically get their coworkers and sick, and,
Okay.
you know, so I'd much rather it said 5 days.
I was thinking
Well,
5 days too.
typically, if it's an accident, it's immediate, and if it's an illness, it goes to 5 days. It's-
Yeah.
Accident, you're gonna know about, one way or the other, there's gonna be some reports.
Right.
No, that's fine. We could,
Yeah, I'm good with that, too.
Well, just one comment, and it's not that I disagree that we could use the 5 days, I don't have a problem with that. The reason for the 3 days is because under the Family and Medical Leave Act, someone who is out for over 3 days for a legitimate certifiable illness is eligible to invoke the FMLA, which is a whole other.
Right.
So that's where
But
but they
if-
have to have a doctor's note for that. So, but basically, the 3 days is a protection for the town, for a company, because you're not having to necessarily approve the prior time, the 5 days or whatever. But if you want to change it to 5 days, I mean, to be honest, I've never been to 5 days.
I mean,
But just so you know that after 3 days, someone, frankly, the department head or who's ever serving as a department head is supposed to notify the employee that they could potentially be eligible for family medical leave.
That's what I was going to ask. How many days is that where the employer has to send out the information?
Well, it doesn't,
There's something in there that says the employer has to be proactive and send out a letter saying you may be eligible and if you're
yeah,
interested.
it's supposed to be 3 days, but, you know, I don't know that many people do. That's why people will require, it's within the period of time when the person asks for, but it should be made known, it should be made known to them that they could potentially be eligible.
well, given the fact that we have a 4-day work week with some employees and a 4.5-day work week, that's why I was looking at 5 days. I figured, you know, if they're out for a week,
it's fine.
that following Monday, you're gonna be notifying them
Yep.
of their, and you're gonna be asking for verification because they're not back to work. But I've seen too many times where people get into that nasty hub of, do I go to the doctor's office, I'm sick, and everyone at the doctor's office is like, I really don't want you to come in here, but I can't tell you that.
So you agree that 5 days?
Well,
Does it require a motion or?
well, the question comes down to, I wasn't sure if they wanted to pass over that whole section or accept certain sections.
Well, I mean, for this section, I'll be glad to make a motion, we change 13.7 to 5 consecutive work days just to get it in there.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, the next one I have on my list is elected officials.
Hold on.
Oh,
So-
sorry.
Sorry, it was brought up about the sick leave accumulation. If you're a part-timer versus a full-timer, technically you can accumulate 6 months versus 3 months.
You know, maybe I'm just as I always say, a dumb engineer, but I haven't figured that out yet. He told that to me, and I went home and I actually put it on my damn blackboard to try to figure out what he's talking about, and
Well,
I still don't understand it. I wish I could.
I work 20 hours a week,
Right.
and it'll take me twice as long as a person working 40 hours a week.
Right.
But I can accumulate up to 520 hours. And once I get there, I go out on sick leave at 20 hours a week. That's 6 months' pay for me. Where if I accumulated 520 hours and I work 40 hours,
Right.
I'm getting paid 40 hours for half.
But you had to work twice, you know, it's
Oh, I
twice
agree.
the...
It's-
Tell me how you want to write it, I'll write it, but I wrote the darn section, and when he tells me that, and I look at it and go, I don't see it, but hey, you're smarter, you guys are smarter than I.
You
I'm
just
just an old
spent so
man.
much time looking at it, it's tough, yeah.
But
It made a point to bring up and talk about. I don't
Yeah, I mean, I can write whatever you guys want, I mean, I'd be happy to, but,
So it depends, do you want days, you could use theoretically days, you could.
don't want to use days, because it's got to be hours.
You know, you use hours, it's, from experience, it is an administrative nightmare to try to, manage. If you're putting a limit on it, to put a limit on the 20 hours, unless people, I don't know, where I used to work, people were working all over the place in terms of, you could have 20 hours, 22, 24, you know, up to 40. It's really administratively almost impossible to cap. Of course, we had a service that was, ADP, that was doing the payroll.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to cap that amount, you know, up to a certain,
It's hard to prorate it?
pardon?
It would be hard to prorate it depending on your hours of work, is that what
I
you're saying?
think so. I don't know, Jim, if you've had any experience with that, but it's,
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Sounds like nobody really has an issue with that. Okay. Okay, just wanted to bring it up.
Okay, I have elected officials next. Please clue me in.
We're not done with,
Ah, jeez.
well, we're still on sick leave, and we have, if they don't want to pass over the whole section, then they at least need to make a motion of what they accept in that section.
In some direction.
Yeah.
Us would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I can't just sit out there in limbo.
I'm gonna throw my, you know, I'll stretch my neck out a little, but I'll make a motion, we accept the whole section 13.0. 13.0,
As is?
as is.
So when, just to be clear here, oh, so that includes 13.1 through 13.7.
Yeah.
I just,
Except the 5
Do I
days.
hear a second? The only thing that's modified is 5 days instead of 3.
Right.
Do I hear a second? I'll second it. Discussion?
Yeah, I guess my question is why don't the other two members want to approve it, just so we'll understand? Is it because we want to get a cost on long-term? or-
Well, I think that's a little lacking. I'd like to revisit that 13.3. So if we approve it now,
Right.
I think it'll be forgotten.
So then let me ask you this, just to ask. If we approve the entire section except section 13.3, and we table that section for further research, that would go back to the personnel board?
Yes, the catch-up part.
Yeah, you don't want the,
No, 13.1.
you want the ketchup, you know, you want that no matter what, right?
Which one do you
You're
want?
talking about 13.1, about,
You said 13.1 was okay.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, is everybody okay with that?
Well, 13,
3.
3 or 2?
I'm good with it all.
I understand that, but the other two members, I'm trying to, what section are you having concern with? That I'm just trying to move this meeting forward, and I'm looking at taking the sections you're having a concern with and just tabling those so that we keep going with the rest of it.
I have an issue with 13.3. That's my big,
13.3?
Right, I feel
the same way
as Jim does, yeah.
So do you want to table 13.3?
Yes.
And that, why you have it, what's your problem with 13.3?
I want to get direction on which way to go, whether we would consider going to long-term, short-term disability or not.
I thought you were talking long-term only. This would take care of your short-term, right?
No, I'm talking about short-term, long-term.
Short-term is 520 hours. If they get 520
Right.
hours accrual, that would take care of short-term, so I thought long-term was
Correct.
the
It
issue.
may be cheaper to go short-term, long-term.
With no sick time off?
Yeah, you're saying eliminate the sick time, right?
Yeah, that'd be
No, I don't eliminate sick time, no. I was trying to,
But I see your point. Maybe, yeah, it should be deferred until we have better understanding. I'll try to get some numbers, and you already have some, so.
So if I amend my motion to accept 13.0 in its entirety, except for 13.3, does that satisfy
Yes.
yes.
both of yours? Do you want to amend your second?
I'll second the motion for amendment.
Okay.
My only concern is, does that have an effect on the fact that 13.2 is being approved?
Or 13.1 that has 520 hours.
Yeah,
I thought they didn't want 13.1 there at first, yeah.
because what will happen is they're interrelated to each other.
Hey, I'm
This is just a catch-up
co-chair
session.
on this thing too, you know.
Yeah.
It's a joint meeting,
Let me
right?
see the paperwork.
You didn't vote to cut off public comment, though, did you?
Yes.
You took a vote to cut off public comment?
Yep. As soon as you ran out in the hallway.
I think he just closed it.
You just closed it.
I don't think we voted on it,
And
but
if you close public comments, would like to have board withhold sections not move forward, that was the next discussion that pursued, and then Art stood up.
All right, so you didn't technically vote on it, all right, proceed.
Say point of order.
Not yet.
He's saving it.
I want to keep this moving, but I don't want us to vote on something and then have a problem with the fact that we accepted something that interrelates to something else.
yeah, what I'm saying is, I'm going back to short-term, long-term disability, there's no fixed number of hours. If you have a claim, you get paid for the time you're out sick. You don't ever run out of time because you use your short-term disability for 3 months, and if it transitions into long-term disability, it could be 2 more years. There's no 520 hours. You follow me?
Yes.
Yeah, so you don't need it, you're saying.
That's why I'm saying I don't know about voting in this section yet.
I was clear, now I'm confused. So you're saying if we had short-term disability, that takes over from day one?
Yes.
Well, usually there's a 5-day
Sick
on
time
a
day?
sickness.
Okay.
Then it would pick up, and it would go for 3 months, up to 3 months, and if they're still sick, then it transitions into long-term
So
disability.
they've got to wait 5 days, I understand that part. So we would have to give everybody a minimum of 5 days accrual to make it to the
Well, what's
short-term.
the 5 days we were talking about back here?
That's just for a doctor's note when you're out.
Yeah, that's all.
Doesn't say who's paying for them, it just,
Yeah.
It seems Mr. Kemp would really like to say something.
Yeah, he would.
Thank you. Just one thing, there is nothing in this policy about the short-term disability, so if you accept this section without addressing it, it's gone, correct?
right.
So I urge you to table this section. Thank you. That's my comment.
So let me just, what I'm used to, and that doesn't mean it's a good or bad thing, is you get to accrue X amount of hours, say 520 in this example, and after that is when long-term disability kicks in.
Correct.
So it's up to me to accrue those hours. If I use them a day here, a day there to do what I want to do, then if I'm ever out sick for a long period of time, that first 520 hours, whatever I have in the bank I use, if there's a gap between the 520 and the long-term coming, that, I have to pay for that myself. And to me, it helps people to build the bank up, rather than using them just.
There's two distinct things here, right, the way I look at it. What Jim's talking about, and there's the disability side, and then there's the sick time side. They're not the same.
Right.
And you certainly want sick time for, the colds and the flus and the usual things, so,
But do you want 520 hours?
so we'd have, if we're gonna do disability, we'd have to add a new section for that, and, whatever. So, yeah, it all depends on how many, I don't know, how many sick days people.
Yeah.
Before they didn't accrue them. It was not accrued. There was no such thing as a sick bank in this town.
And I think there should be,
That's what we thought too.
right.
Question to Jim. So if somebody is out on short-term or long-term disability in your situations, can you hire a replacement for them?
Absolutely.
Sure.
What I just, in this particular situation?
Well, yeah.
Because in this situation, if there's somebody out, we really don't have the funds to replace them for any period of time.
Well, you would have the same funds that they would be making, because if you're not paying the payroll, the disability company takes over.
The current, the 26 now.
Oh, I see.
You have to, it's a double, you're
Correct.
paying two, the 2 for 1, yeah, right.
So, kind of to tack on to what Jim had been saying before, that it would depend on the insurance company that's providing the short-term or long-term, or even policy that you buy, because a lot of them have different ones. But often there is an elimination period, that you have to be out for so many days, whether it be 5 days or 10 or 15, and frankly, when we had was you had to be out for 30 days before your short-term disability kicked in. So there's a wide variety there, and based on that, especially if we want to go get more quotes, and I think that would be a good idea, I would suggest we table this.
Yeah, and we weren't looking at 60% either. I mean, we were looking at a higher value than that, because people were saying, hey, we get 26 weeks here, so we tried to get something closer to what they would normally get.
But 60% of after-tax is closer to 90-something%.
That's true,
If it's set up properly.
if it's set up.
In the,
Withdraw your motion?
You gotta withdraw your second first, man.
I'll withdraw my second.
I'll withdraw my first, and
No, you're taking a motion.
well, I think the issue is, I mean, you're shaking your head, yeah, but it's, as we talk about it, and he brings this up, he brings that up. If we do it wrong, the employees are gonna suffer, and this is too important of
these
an
all
issue.
work together, so I think that section should be
Yep.
reworked and then move on from there.
I'll make a motion, we put aside section 13.0 in its entirety, so we can review it and get more information before we
Second.
decide on it.
And Jim seconds it. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Passes? Yes.
Yes, Janet Kane,
Yeah.
83 Glendale Road. When we start meeting with the insurance companies, I know Charlie's our liaison, but if one of the two folks that are feel strongly about this not being satisfactory could make those meetings as well, and we don't get to this point again, and, so we could
I mean, we've been around and around with this for 2 damn years. I'm sorry, but I'm getting pretty damn frustrated with this, especially with all the insurance companies and all the stuff we brought in.
Right.
We
And,
understand. Part of the
I-
process is this board keeps changing too.
Yeah, I
So it's
understand.
always a catch game trying
Yeah,
to
I know.
keep up the current. If either select persons want to attend your meeting, then I'll step away because we don't want a forum in there,
Yeah,
and that's fine.
I'd be glad to be there.
yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
All right. So my reading is that we have tabled section 13, sick leave.
Okay.
Next section.
I just want to bring up elected officials. That came up a couple of times. I have no idea what the heck an elected official is, except I am one. But as far as how they're compensated here, how they get raises, I have no idea. I've never seen it described anywhere. I don't know.
The elected officials, town clerk and treasurer, get their compensation at town meeting,
Okay.
okay? I don't know if there is any other structure for elected officials. Do you?
They should have to follow the personnel policy rules, but the compensation piece isn't gonna apply because it's a stipend annually that's split up throughout the year. So let's say Jackie, moves on in her next career to one of these elected paid positions. She would hold the position, but she theoretically, you know, this is where you run the gamble. She doesn't actually have to show up, so she might show up Monday, the first day she's elected, and that's it. So she gets paid continually and regularly throughout the year. So the holiday piece doesn't apply to her, vacation doesn't apply, sick doesn't apply.
Okay.
So any benefits apply to these people?
Well, we'd have to look in, but I imagine it's potential that FMLA potentially could kick in. That we'd have to look into, because we haven't had an occurrence with that recently.
No, I
That's
just,
come up.
yeah.
But I would say otherwise, in general, all of these policies should still apply, you know, drug-free workplace, smoke-free workplace. Someone's not gonna be excluded because they're an elected official.
Okay. All right. Holidays, there was a number of people about salary people
Where are we?
brought up by a member that's in the room here.
11-2.
11-2. Now, our cut at this, and I think we talked to the select board on this one, maybe not all the present members, but the situation here was that we used to define police, fire, highway as an extra week's vacation. We took that out. We figured if they want that, they're going to have to negotiate it through their contracts. And unfortunately, one person that this affected doesn't have a contract, though he is a department head. So that's why we took it out, and obviously we can put it back in if you think, but that's why it's not there.
But if you put it back in, then you're clashing with the contract employees' contracts.
Yeah.
This is a classic catch-22.
Yeah, I understand, Charlie, yep. But that's what's being brought up today, tonight. So, any help here that you want to give us, we'll be glad to take it, or just leave it the way it is.
So is the point of the salary
No,
person?
talking
wants
about,
to get time
yeah,
for
holidays.
No.
No, the point is, so, I'm not sure how Art's linking
Oh,
the two, but
I'm
so.
thinking of something
the-
else, I'm sorry.
So vacation is what he was chatting about. And he
Vacation,
was
yeah.
saying that in the old rules, if you were a department head who supervised X number of people, which is why most people as a department head fought to oversee a certain number of people so they would qualify, they would get additional time for vacation.
No, that's not the case. The case was they would get called out at any time
Oh,
during the night or day.
But that's the other piece. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm trying to answer your first journey down the lane, Art. Give me one moment. Bear with me, please. So.
Art, please have her explain to you what you mean.
But so on this one thing, that was a point of contention. So the idea with moving forward with the new bylaws was to make it even. Because if you go to any other community or even different locations and stuff for a lot of, I imagine private, but I know I can tell you other municipalities, you don't get additional time if you're a department head. You get time based on longevity. So if you've been with the community for 20 years, you have additional lots of vacation time built up that you get every year. If you've only been there for a year or two, should you really be getting more vacation than everyone else just because you might manage one or two people?
There's two sides to that question, for sure.
Yeah, I apologize. I was talking, Heather's right about vacation, but it also, doesn't really apply to the holiday. That's something separate. But we did take out the extra week of vacation for department heads. Sorry for the confusion. Now, the holiday piece is what you were talking about, correct?
No, I was on vacation. Now you got me swapped.
Okay.
So holiday piece, Art, I think you were saying that there's concern that as a department head, you essentially are on the clock 24 hours. So if you end up coming in during a holiday day, do you get some comp time somewhere else?
I mean, where I worked as a department head and as a director, suck it up. I mean, that was part of the job. You were part of management, and that's just the way it is. I don't know how people deal with it here, but that's been my experience.
My experience has been when they declared a state of emergency, I went to work, everybody else went home.
Right. And on the other hand, I used to say, if things were slow and you could get away, you get away. I mean, so.
That's my experience too.
Yeah.
That's where you get paid above what the average person
Exactly.
gets paid.
All right.
Discussion on the vacation,
I
Friday and holiday.
Holiday.
Any change on the holiday, do you guys?
No.
I thought we were we spent a lot of time on the holiday. It's amazing how convoluted that can get.
Well, it doesn't appear there's any change
Okay.
with that, so.
And the workplace drug-free, what was I had a comment I was gonna say about that. Oh, as,
23-2.
what was your term, Josie, that you said, as needed or as?
For cause.
For cause. So we probably should have added that to that section. We certainly, for cause, we being, whoever, department head, the select board, whatever, for cause, could ask for a drug test. For cause.
So do I hear a motion to add for cause, requesting a test of any employee?
So moved.
No, I can't make a
I'm going to
motion.
second it for conversation. For cause, boy, that could be fought. I mean, suspect.
You can't do it randomly. The only one that has to do it randomly is Randall, because that's the federal law.
I understand
You
that.
can't do a random, I was shocked when I heard that, but I got this right from our HR director here, and so yeah, we can't say that.
I've had cases where we've had people that we suspected were under the influence. And under the contract, we were able to send them to the doctor with pay, saying, we want you to get clearance. And that gave us the leeway, but for cause, what's cause? I mean, if I see you, kind of walking wrong, or if I smell something on your breath, but drugs, you're not gonna smell anything, or,
Yeah.
Shut eyes.
Or maybe just leave it the way it is, just the highway folks that have to have it done.
Well, as I read this, I think the highway folks start where it says additionally, but the top part I thought meant everybody, applied to everybody. I think Randall was thinking applied to just the highway for the whole thing. Is that the way?
As far as the drug-free,
Yeah.
I guess, and globally, I think you're right, yeah.
You want clarification on that?
Go ahead.
We're gonna start throwing 4x4s.
My only point is, you say it, but the only people who live it are the highway department. So, I mean, it's just a point for conversation.
Okay. So you have-
I have no real issues, only that it's,
All we're saying is we expect everyone to be drug-free.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying.
but there's nothing
There's no
behind
penalty.
it.
There's nothing behind it.
Very good.
It doesn't says,
Except for the DOT part.
but that's not us anyways.
Right, that's not
But-
us.
But theoretically speaking, if there was a problem with an employee and they eventually were terminated and you cited to this specific provision, which everyone has to sign that they've received, when you're in a division of unemployment assurance and they say, what's going on with this? You say, well, here's my specific thing, the drug-free policy right here that says all employees for the town will be drug-free, and this was the violation.
What's a drug?
I didn't say it was a perfect solution.
Aspirin.
Joanne, AKA Josie Alderman, 48 High Street. So for cause would be if somebody appears intoxicated, if they're slurring their speech, if they're behaving erratically. You know, there's lots of things. You can't define everything in a policy. But that would be the type of thing that could be for cause where a department head may request, and I would think that before just sending somebody out to get a drug test, that they would need to go through the town administrator to have one. But that is, I think it should be in the policy or the rules and regulations that they have the right to request a blood test or urine test or whatever, drug test.
My only concern is that once we have the right, we say, we want you to take a drug test, we have no vendor available to send that person to. I mean, what I'm used to is.
You'd have to have one.
We have a company on contract, happens to be
Right.
out of Hadley, that you have to go there, and we make sure the person shows up there.
Right.
And if they can't do it themselves, we'll get the person there. But
Right.
if we just say, go have a drug test, or have a test, where are they going? You know?
But if we have it in the policy and we see that this is something we need to have established, we can move forward that way. If it's not in the policy,
Well, I agree.
it's moot. I mean, personally, I have no problem with it saying at the end, for cause.
I'm good with that, too. I just, once we get to that point, where do we send him or her?
Work connection, Holyoke, Massachusetts.
Right.
Holyoke Hospital?
Holyoke, the work connection.
So that's at the
Yeah.
That's when we go
That's
down
at the
to-
Holyoke Hospital, isn't it?
Right.
Holyoke Medical Center, yeah.
Can you go down here to Cooley Dickinson Lab right here in Southampton?
Well, I think that's where we need to figure out
We can
the,
establish that after that. We need to
Yeah.
establish a policy before we establish an approach to it.
do we have any motions on the table right now?
For discussion.
I thought I did did we?
I don't have any,
No.
oh, wait, for cause, anyone could request by Sears, seconded by Martin to add for cause.
Okay, so we had for cause already.
Wasn't bold, I'm sorry.
Okay. We'll vote. All in favor? Aye. Jim?
Aye.
Okay.
That's all I have on my list. I think you have others, but those were I thought, the high points.
Before I forget, it's a typo on 4.3D. I think it's the last sentence in the paragraph. The town may not and will not. I think it should say ask. Yeah, page 25. I just think it's just a typo. Yeah, exactly.
Can you say that one more time, Jim, now that I'm on the right
It's in
page?
section 25.
Yeah.
So it's the last sentence in that paragraph, the big paragraph up there. The town may or may not and will not, it should be ask. It's as right now.
Thank you.
Oh, here it is, right here.
We'll fix it. Thank you.
That's
It
page
just-
25?
Page 25, top paragraph, last sentence.
Right, the town may not and will not as having survived.
I will entertain a motion to accept the policy as modified with tabling of section 13O, sickness leave, for further review.
I say no, for discussion.
Well, somebody needs to make the motion, and
What was the section to table 13?
13O, which is the sick leave section.
Right, to table that section except for, yeah,
Yeah, basically what I'm saying is we're accepting everything else as modified, except for the sick leave. That is being tabled
right.
for further,
Or review.
Because you have to keep something in place, right? So-
yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Second? I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, if we vote on this, that would put this into effect.
everything except the sick leave issue.
And they would have to do what, refer to the other manual for the sick leave?
That's my understanding. Am I correct with that?
So, I'd like to say something. Okay, so I believe, as Janine had alluded to, that she wanted to get some more input from employees, and I wanted to get more department heads. I know you've given them plenty of time, but I still don't feel comfortable okaying the entire thing, besides, of course, the health insurance section, until we get more input from the department heads and some employees.
So how are we gonna do that? Who's
Well-
gonna drive that? Who's gonna get this thing done? That's
Well-
what I'm asking.
If we do it in September when everybody's back from vacation and we have more time to go, what is it, what if we go one more time and ask them to come in, we set a date and we discuss it again before we settle on everything in Koyev?
The last time we had 2 public meetings, one at 4 and one at 6, and I think we had 2 department heads.
Right, I know,
So it was really important to them then, right?
but I heard from department heads, and a lot of them couldn't make it. I'm not making this up, it's not something that I just want to do, but I did, no, I'm telling you, I heard from department heads, and they just didn't feel that they were ready yet to, that they still had some things to say about.
We'll make the changes. Right, but we'll make the changes, and then it's up to you guys to call them in or do whatever you're gonna do with them, because we're not gonna do it.
One of the reasons.
We've done it already.
And yeah, you did a great job, and thank you so much, everybody.
One of the reasons that I opened up this meeting for public comment was to allow the town employees one more opportunity in front of both boards to give us feedback. One of the reasons I tried very hard to try to bring this in sections was so that we would focus on the sections that the employees were having concerns with and trying to address that. I believe we accomplished that tonight. I believe that the only section that we see needs some retooling is 13.0 relative to the sick leave issues. But I believe the rest of the document is standalone, ready to go. That's my personal feeling. I've watched that board struggle with trying to get public input for a long time. I've watched individuals come up to me and explain to me their concerns. And I'm very accessible in town. People come up to me, I'm doing stuff all the time. It seemed to be the sick leave was the issue. If we table that, I think the rest of the document can go forward. That's my belief. I hear you, I understand, but I also believe that we've given plenty of opportunity for public comment.
I also think that once this is put into place, employees are going to have something to point to and say, here's exactly the benefits we have, and they're very clear and succinct, and I don't think it's something they have right now. So I think it's going to be a benefit for current as well as, new employees down the road.
I am good with everything in this policy so far except section 13. What I have a problem with is having 2 different documents that will be in play. I just think that's...
My understanding, and I may be wrong, but my understanding is the only thing in play in the old document is the sick leave issue. Everything else is off the table.
Well, there's the disability, which is not in here, so that would be.
That would still be in play.
And
You need to get to
and the
that
sick-
podium.
And the sick time would be in play too. That'd be 2 separate things.
I'm gonna get you a boom mic pretty soon.
Sorry, I apologize, Charlie. I just want to make sure that, it would be the old sick time and the old disability.
Right.
That's all tied into one.
Right.
Right.
And here,
And we're tabling that section until you guys can retool that section. So it's gonna be the old policy in that regard until such time that we go back. And once you retool it, it's gonna go back for public input. There's gonna be input on that to them, and then eventually back to us again. So the area of concern, I think, is going to be still open for discussion. The rest of it, nobody's really vested any time into saying there's a problem with that. So I can't see taking all this and putting it on hold when there's one section.
I would entertain the idea of, this is televised, hopefully they're listening, the document's out there. We have a meeting on Tuesday. I would hold this vote on Tuesday and ask for, if anybody has concerns, submit a written letter to us by Tuesday. If we have nothing by Tuesday, I would be willing to vote on this, excluding 13 and moving forward. But at least giving, and we're talking a few days, I mean.
I have no problem with that, Jim.
Yeah.
I really don't.
So,
I'm trying to be as open and fair
right.
as I can be.
I don't want to have another public hearing and
Right.
drag this on for months, but I think this is televised. They understand, they saw the discussion tonight, the document's out there. Give us a letter of your concerns. We look at it. If there's nothing shows up, we make a vote on Tuesday and move forward.
So then, would you make a motion that we,
We have a motion and a second on the floor. So
You have a motion to accept the policy as modified with the exception of section 13-0 to be held for review by Martin, seconded by Kanicki.
I withdraw my second?
I'll withdraw my first, my
Make a-
motion. Can I ask a question? Are you okay with that too? Because you have concerns.
One more, yeah, if we give one more opportunity on Tuesday, I think that's great.
Okay.
Absolutely. And if they don't say anything by then, then that's it.
So if we're all happy with that?
Yes.
Okay. Right.
Go ahead, Jim, make a motion.
I'll mimic John's motion with the exception that, I'll put it this way. I'm going to make a motion that we table this until
Our next
Tuesday, our next meeting, pending any
public feedback.
public feedback, correct.
I'll second it. But public feedback, we should probably define it. I would like it in
Written.
writing to
In
the
writing.
town administrator.
Yes.
Because we don't all want to come in and say, I heard from Joe and Mary.
Exactly, yeah, it should be
Public
written.
comments have to be in writing to the town administrator
By what time?
by
Prior.
Noon on
by
Tuesday.
5 o'clock Monday afternoon.
Sounds
Do
good to me.
Tuesday, because it's not, if someone's out on Monday or,
Okay.
I'm okay with Tuesday at
Then
noon.
3 o'clock Tuesday,
So can I ask
because
you,
you need some time to spool it.
Right,
but also, we'll have public time before we vote on this, so if anybody wants to come, they can speak on it.
right, good.
And
Thank
just
you.
Put it on the
So
agenda,
either
Heather, please.
in writing by whatever time on
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock on Tuesday, or come to the meeting and voice it in person. Is that good?
Perfect.
Unless you can't come to the meeting, I
Right.
guess.
All right, this is
Yeah.
what I have. A motion to table until Tuesday, August 16th, pending public feedback. Labrie, seconded by Martin. Further clarification, all comments in writing by 3 PM on Tuesday to the town administrator. Public time also on Tuesday to address concerns at the meeting.
All those in favor?
Well, was it- okay, it was a second by mine. Aye.
So that's it.
Opposed?
Done.
Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion
Really close.
for adjournment unless there's something else that we need to do.
I think we should officially thank the committee for doing
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Good job. Good job.
Very good job.
I don't hear a motion to adjourn, so I guess Art's still got the
Make a
motion.
motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?